Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Yashwendra Singh, Executive Editor of ETCIO, and also the moderator of this extremely relevant session on edge data centers facilitating hybrid cloud adoption. The challenging economic environment over the last few years have forced enterprises to pursue a very flexible IT strategy, which allows them to optimize their IT spends while allowing them scalability and reach. As a result, there has been a surge in data center and cloud adoption, with organizations now using data centers to co-locate and connect to cloud security, cloud service providers to offload their IT workloads and shift loads with high flexibility with scalable interconnection capacity offered by carrier-neutral edge data centers. In this panel discussion today, we have top enterprise technology leaders with us who will throw more light on the advantages that edge data centers lend and how businesses are maximizing them. Please join me in welcoming our panelists for the day in alphabetical order. Mr. Abhijit Mukherjee, GM Business Information System, Mahanagar Gas. Mr. Manoj Paul, MD, GPX India. Mr. Vamsi Mudiam, Director Business Development, Oracle India. And Mr. Yogesh Salyan, Founder and Director, Client Services, Skanda Media Services. Welcome, gentlemen. I'll set the ball rolling with Mr. Manoj. Manoj, edge data centers as a concept is growing worldwide and is touted to be the next big thing in India. For the benefit of the audience, can you please explain what is an edge data center and share the key value propositions of an edge data center? What value does it extend to customers, to clients?
Sure, well, the data center industry has been growing over the last 30 years. And as the data centers grew, they started moving out from within the cities to on the outskirts of the cities and then to far off places where the land was available at a cheaper rate and also power was cheaper over there, these two being the main consideration. However, there are applications and there are traffics which need to be closer to the end user. Today, 60% of the internet traffic is video. And we are now doing a lot of transactions, financial transactions on the internet, and a lot of things are happening, which including the video conferencing that we are doing. All these applications cannot be at a far off core data center, but needs to be closer to the end user. And by end user, I mean people like you and me working from home or watching Netflix or Facebook or surfing Facebook from home, or even enterprise users connecting to cloud service providers from their enterprise buildings in the cities. That's where the edge data center concept came in, wherein the OTT, say for instance, Facebook or a Google or Netflix, what they would do is that they would cache all the relevant content, very currently used content and delay sensitive traffic in a smaller edge data center. And this data center would then interconnect with their core data center, which can be located somewhere else. Similarly, the cloud service providers also, while their core data centers are very huge, I mean, that will have thousands of racks, tens of hundreds of megawatt of power, but they will co-locate their edge POP in an edge data center, which is closer to the end user. So let me explain you all that with an example of GPX. I mean, GPX is a edge data center, and the requisites of an edge data center are like this. First, it has to be located near the end user. So we are located at Andheri, Chandivali, which is close to the residential areas and also close to the enterprise buildings. Second is it has to be a very high quality data center. It has to be tier 4 so that the uptime of these edge connections are really assured. But most importantly, it has to be a carrier neutral data center. Why? Because if you are a carrier neutral data center, then you encourage and attract multiple carriers to come in. So like in GPX, we have around 130 ISPs and around 11 telecom service provider. Any telecom service provider, you name it, they're all in our data center. What that does is that it connects the end eyeballs to the content edge POP of the OTT or the cloud service provider directly. So today, if you are at your home and connected through a tier 2 or a tier 3 ISP, since that ISP is directly present in the edge data center, your traffic will flow through the ISP to Netflix or Facebook or cloud service providers directly. If it is not so, then what would happen is that the ISP would have to come through an Airtel or a Vodafone through multiple hops, and hence the performance would be created. So first and foremost purpose is that it reduces the hops, it brings content closer to the end user, and then brings in high performance to the end user. Similarly, on the cloud front, since the edge node is in a data center like GPX, the customers who are co-located in our data center can connect to the cloud service provider over a simple cross connect. So they get a very secured connectivity to the cloud service provider while the core could be located somewhere else to the edge and to the network of the cloud in our data center. If you're not co-located in our data center, all you need to take is a simple lease line or an MPLS from your office or from your data center and connect to the edge POP here at GPX. And through that secured connection, you get connected to the region of the cloud service provider. So these are the main parameters of what defines our edge data center and what value it offers to both the service provider, which is the OTTs and the cloud service providers on one side, and to the end user on the other side.
Sure. Sure. Thanks a lot, Manoj, for giving that comprehensive answer and giving us a lowdown on the value that edge data centers offer to customers. Let me come to Mr. Mukherjee now. So MGL connects 1.2 million households as well as over 4,000 small commercial and industrial establishments. The company also supplies CNG to more than 700,000 vehicles, if I'm not wrong. Yes. With such a huge distribution network, what value did shifting the company's infrastructure from on-prem to a tier 4 data center bring about? What are the benefits of this decision on MGL's operations? Can you please throw light on this?
First of all, the thing is that why we shifted from our on-premise to a tier 4 data center. We, as far as our IT policy is concerned, our management has given a mandate that at least your data center should be tier 3. So that is the minimum. That is the standard that we are following presently. The main reason for shifting from on-premise to tier 4 data center was to ensure that we are 24/7 up. So 1 million customers connecting, and our main system is SAP. SAP is the backbone. We have implemented IS Utilities, which is billing this 1.2 million customers, and we have our CNG billing in SAP. So we should not have any kind of a downtime. Secondly, we have our emergency control room and the call center also, all are in SAP. So if we are outside, if we are down for some, say, 15 minutes or even 1 hour, there can be a big disaster. But there were issues while we were in-house. We were not able to manage it. Our team is small, and we felt that we don't have the competency to run a data center. That is the primary thing that made us move to the data center. And when we saw GPX and similar data center, we were amazed to see their facilities, and we shifted to the data center, and we ensure that and our infrastructures are up 24/7. So that is what is the compelling factor for us to move to a tier 4 data center.
Sure. Definitely, sir. Brings a lot of value to your company, for sure. Moving on to Mr. Salehan there. Sir, Skanda is a premium cloud video platform provider for digital TV and pay TV operators. How do you leverage GPX's content and connectivity rich ecosystem for your end customers' benefit? How are you able to enhance user experience for your customers?
Yes. So we are both service provider for the customers as well as we provide integration service to our content partner. So if you see, primarily we serve, there are two kind of customers that we serve. One is the content creators, one is the content distributors, and the content consumer altogether. The GPX center, the edge data center that we use, it's primarily works as an adjacent data center for us, primarily to reach out to the multi-cloud infra. When we talk about the media, right, especially the live as well as the content production, the IPification is still happening. The most of the workflow is still on a baseband infra, which means it's not IP. You must have seen the various production venue or other venue where you have seen this thick cable laying around the venue and all the communication happening over SDI cable. Now, what is happening is that with this COVID happening and the cloud migration happening, even the data capture or the video capture is now moved to the IP. With the technology like SMT 2110, NDI coming in, everything is becoming IP, everything is becoming data, and that's where you need an in-between data center to hop in, convert this baseband to IP, and then reach out to the various cloud partner. And that's where we basically are very much dependent on the edge data center to aggregate, bring in all the traffic. For example, the sports, right? We have matches happening at various venues. This feed need to be bought in at the central place and then has to be delivered to various cloud. When we talk about multi-cloud, again, we use various functionality of different cloud provider, and that's where the edge center become very critical. For example, we might use an AI functionality from a certain cloud provider, while the storage and the compute from the second provider. So it's a mix and match of the situation that we have deployed, and that's what we are extending to our customers.
Great work there, Mr. Salian. Let me come to Mr. Vamsi now. Vamsi, you come from Oracle, a big technology company that actually fuels digital transformation in enterprises. What cloud strategy are you seeing in India across verticals? Oracle obviously has major inroads into the BFSI and also large service companies with your database applications being used by them extensively for years. How has been their journey towards shift into cloud? And what are the steps Oracle is taking to help fuel this journey to cloud for your customers?
I think from a cloud adoption strategy of customers, India is no different from other countries, right? But what we are seeing, and you laid out correctly, right? There is a set of install-based customers who we have where they're currently using a lot of Oracle applications and software. They basically find it very easy to lift and shift, as we call, lift and shift from their on-premises onto Oracle Cloud, right? What that basically means is as a function of their upgrade of a software or a refresh of hardware, or, as from Mahanagar Gas we heard, when they decide that their existing data center is not sturdy enough, they decide to go either, depending on the available infrastructure, they either go to the cloud or go to the edge location. So, for example, if I have a customer who is using a RISC or a Spark architecture and Intel, so what the customer benefits is this hybrid setup where they will co-locate the Spark setup onto a GPX edge location, and they would use the Intel capacity from the Oracle Cloud. And because of this high-speed interconnect, then it will almost be seamless. It will be a very, very, very low latency, secure communication between these two infrastructure setups. So that is something which we see happening. But more importantly, from an Oracle perspective, the fact that what we're using today, Zoom, is on Oracle, is because there are certain nuances we have brought in terms of how do we ensure, with so much of COVID driving digital transformation and people moving to cloud for various reasons. The reasons might be because they want to set up a more resilient infrastructure, so they want to have a DR or a backup, or they want to do a lot more quick digital applications so that their physical interactions in branches or in offices are actually now moving into virtual or digital, right? Or, new applications, right? One of the things we're seeing a huge uptake is digital assistants, right? Because a number of people are not able to go and visit an office. They would rather want to call and the lines get jammed. So they're using AI-based digital assistants to basically do quick, responses to someone, like almost like a FAQ on chat, right? Some of these things are now transforming and pushing that, cloud adoption big time, right? In terms of financial industry specifically, what we've done, so if you sort of peel the onion, there are regulatory, there are security, and there are costs. These are the three big buckets which I would do, and absolutely most critical is the connectivity, right? So what we're seeing is, one, to ensure the regulator is satisfied, we have set up 2 regions in India, so that if a customer wants to move production onto Mumbai data center of ours, he has another data center in the country for DR and failover, etc. Right. Second is security. So we introduced something called Oracle Cloud Guard or Oracle Secure Zone, where usually the problem with cloud security lapses is not that the cloud itself is unsecure, but the way the customer sets it up and the skills required to set up a foolproof, secure environment sometimes causes a problem. So what we have done is we've created something called a Cloud Guard, which will keep detecting and telling you that this is probably going to cost you some intrusion, etc. So that's where, between COVID accelerating some of this, between edge partners providing that sort of a ability to distribute or create. When we say multi-cloud, it's not necessarily two different public cloud providers. It also means something set up in an edge location like GPX and an Oracle cloud. So that is something which is also helping, and also the whole security posture we are trying to create to help some of these customers adopt cloud.
I'll come to you, Manoj, again. And just to continue with the conversation around multi-cloud, I mean, that's the buzzword in technology circles these days. With the growing choice of cloud providers, enterprises are typically adopting a multi-cloud strategy that encompasses offloading different IT workloads to different cloud providers. Right? As enterprise today must constantly keep re-engineering their IT infrastructure to keep up with the pace of digital revolution. It's completely and absolutely imperative to adopt hybrid IT multi-cloud strategies. What are your thoughts on this? How do you see this panning out for enterprises and in their digital roadmaps?
Well, in GPX, we are dealing with around 100 enterprise customers who are using various cloud service providers in our data center. And we are in constant touch with them and also with the partners who support these enterprise customers to deploy cloud. So there are a few things that are emerging. First is that customers, as Abhijit mentioned, more and more, especially after COVID, are moving out of their own data center, in-house data center, either to a third-party data center or to the cloud. So that's first. Second is most customers, except the ones that are born in the cloud, are looking for a hybrid proposition where they're saying, I already have certain assets, I need to sweat that asset till they die, and then only maybe I can think of moving everything onto cloud, and that will also give me some time to get comfort on the cloud and all that. So the hybrid part is coming up. And third is the multi-cloud. And multi-cloud is not so much necessary that they really need to use multiple clouds all at the same time, that everybody will go multi-cloud, but more so because they want that comfort that if I put my critical things on the cloud and I don't have my own infrastructure and something happens to that cloud service provider or that services, then I'm nowhere. At least earlier, I had my own infrastructure and I put my IT team and put it up and something like that. But now if I'm totally dependent on somebody else, what do I do? That's where the multi-cloud strategy of enterprise makes it convenient for them to adopt cloud and in a journey to move towards the cloud. And second, of course, it gives them the choice that, as Yogesh mentioned, that some applications work better on some cloud service provider and some application works on some certain other cloud provider. Having said that, we realize that there's a need for a cloud exchange, because GPX has the privilege of having edge POPs of 8 cloud service providers, 8 major cloud service providers and few other Indian cloud service providers, apart from having AWS Direct Connect, Oracle Fast Connect, and Google Dedicated Interconnect. So what it does is that using a cloud exchange, an enterprise which is present in a GPX data center can take a single pipe, and on that pipe, they get connected to multiple cloud service providers, and they can easily move traffic from one to the other without having to worry, do I have enough bandwidth on the other cloud service provider link and all that. Secondly, if this customer is not located in GPX but somewhere else, again, they can take a single lease line, secured lease line, 1 gig, 10 gig, come to a data center and then keep moving the traffic between the different cloud service providers. At times it might happen that they just, because of urgency, they might need, or some sort of problems with one cloud service provider, they might need to move all the traffic. Now that since all that is in one pipe, they don't need to worry about the bandwidth. What we believe is flexibility is going to help adoption of cloud. Assurance is going to help adoption of cloud, and choice is really going to help adoption of cloud. So we, being a service neutral service provider where we don't provide cloud services ourselves, we really are keeping an ear close to our end customers and then encouraging them in whatever way possible. And in this case, by providing multiple cloud services, secure cloud services within our data center. And we believe that will help adoption of cloud going forward.
Sure, Manoj. So flexibility and choice would be the two big differentiators for technology leaders going forward. And you're offering both. Great. I'll come back to Mr. Salyan there. So what was the reason for Skandha to propose its customer a hybrid solution with co-location at a tier 4 data center and adopting a multi-cloud strategy for certain workloads. How do you think a cloud exchange offered by a third-party data center helps Kanda's customers to easily adopt and execute a multi-cloud strategy?
So, like I said, we cater to two kind of customers, the new media and the traditional broadcast customers. Now, new media customers, they are early adopter of the cloud, and they are already on the cloud using particular cloud partner and growing with them. We have another set of customers who are the broadcast kind of a customer or a live event kind of a customers, right? For whom basically we provide our facility where the content is still acquired from the satellite or from a dark fiber. So this content comes from the field, it comes from the broadcast channel. Now, when this content need to be delivered to a new media method, right, like OTT, giving to multi-screen devices, that is where this edge data center comes in, and basically we use this facility primarily for converting the satellite feed or the IP feed that we get from various locations. Convert that into IP and then make sure that okay, it's delivered to the relevant OTT platform or the cloud partner. Cloud exchange or edge data center, it becomes kind of an amalgamation point for us when it comes to the data. We are augmenting our infra primarily at the edge data center from future perspective. For example, now we already talking of high definition. It's become very popular with the TV users. We already talking 4K, 8K kind of a content getting generated. The kind of content that we get from the field, right? It's minimum 50 Mbps. It's a bit rate for a single stream, and that keeps on will keep on increasing as the number of camera input that will come in and that need to be sent to cloud for processing purpose. Our customers and we strongly believe that for generating a 1 hour content, right, the kind of infra that is required or kind of effort that is being put at the field, at the recording studio or the editing studio, it has a huge investment. And with the cloud coming in and with the facility that would help us basically reach out to the multiple cloud infra, we are able to use this particular the processing capability or AI capability to enrich the content on pay-per-use basis. And that's where the facility like the edge or adjacent data center that we're talking about, right? It helps a lot. Apart from connecting to the cloud, connecting to the various venue and the conversion to IP, it is also helping us connect the various premises of our customer, because now we're talking about shooting happening at various locations. Because of the COVID, we cannot have so many people sitting closer to the shooting floor. Earlier, what used to happen is the editors, for example, while the shooting is happening, there's an editor who is basically cutting the content and sending it to the producer for finalization. Now that this everything, the entire workflow is happening over IP. And for that, basically, you need an aggregation point. And that's where we're using this edge data center and the cloud connector.
Great. Amazing stuff that you're doing through these edge cloud data centers, Yogesh. I'll come back to Mr. Mukherjee. Sir, I think you got disconnected. Welcome back. Sir, ensuring business continuity and having a robust disaster recovery plan is critical for every organization. And, we've seen that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, how critical it is to have a disaster recovery and backup plan. However, deploying a disaster recovery plan is expensive and is typically done only by large enterprises. Do you feel this has changed now with the emergence of co-location data centers? And how? Do you think they would help in securing data at a much reduced cost now? Your thoughts here.
Yeah, firstly, when we had our in-house data center, our DR site was also in place, but that was an on-prem DR site for ERP and Microsoft Exchange and GIS. These were the major on-prem DR site was there. But we had huge number of other applications with mobility coming in and the internet-based applications, and also the applications which were our internal to us, that is intranet-based applications. So for that, to have another DR site was an expensive proposition. So we took the advantage of cloud and we moved to the cloud for the non-ERP kind of an applications. And we have hosted it with the help of GPX in Amazon Web Services.
Great, sir. Vamsi, you just heard Mr. Mukherjee on how he's maximizing co-location data centers for fulfilling his company's DR needs. Can you further elaborate on the major benefits of hosting DR on cloud? Also, I've got another question for you. It would be great if you can throw light on the benefits of Oracle Fast Connect. Two questions for you there.
Okay, cool. In terms of DR, the reason why when we say cloud adoption, of one of the first use cases, the second use cases we talk to customers after moving your test and dev environment onto cloud is DR usually is something which is on standby, not always switched on, not always need to be powered and managed, right? But you should be able to quickly spin up and set up your DR environment when an eventuality happens or when you want to do testing. So automatically, you say, okay, if I have to put CapEx and set this up all on my hardware, which is probably going to be used for 10% of the time in a year, does it make sense? Or should I basically set up this whole DR environment on cloud? And most of us, like for example, Oracle gives you per second billing, right? You don't need to, you can set it up, switch it off, and then start it when you want, right? So it gives you a huge advantage to actually have your data being replicated on a sort of server or a service like an Oracle Database Cloud Service or an Exadata Cloud Service, and only spin up the entire application and spin up the database to a size of what it should be in production when a disaster happens and when something happens. So the benefits of having the infrastructure for yourself, but at a cost where you pay only for what you use, usually automatically is a no-brainer sort of a point of birth. And we've seen that accelerate, with the COVID, right? A lot more companies which had either small setups of DR or they had their own DR set up. They realized that they couldn't, if something were to happen, they couldn't send people to the data center because it was their own data center. They couldn't even send people there. If it was a cloud data center, it's easy. It's already manned. They had their own system of manning it, so it would have been easy to provision a server and set it up, right? Corollary and complementing to that is now that you have the setup, which is in DR somewhere. Now, if you look at a sizable bank, even if you do a change data capture for the database to upload to Oracle Cloud so that you're keeping the DR database in sync with what is happening in production, you're probably pumping about a terabyte of data for a sizable institution, right? Now, you don't do that on the internet. You don't want to do that on the internet. You don't want to do that, because the service quality is not guaranteed. So what we suggest is a private connectivity, and the name we've given it is called Oracle Fast Connect, right? And as Manoj mentioned, Oracle Fast Connect, Oracle has the point of presence for all network termination in GPX. While our data center itself is in a different location, we have a dedicated line between our data center and GPX edge location, but all the network providers terminate into GPX and there they get a cross connect into the data. So what Oracle Fast Connect provides is a highly secure and reliable connectivity option where you can actually work with your existing provider. Again, going back to what Manoj said, every possible provider who's providing communication in the country actually has some level of termination into GPX. Right? Basically use that and run from there on to Oracle, your instance in the Oracle region or Oracle data center, so that you can keep basically your production and DR setup in sync. Not just that, right? Any one-time setup, even if you want to set up a first-time DR setup, you're pumping 300 TB, 200 TB of data onto setting up your data, your DR setup. Even then, we actually suggest either use a fast connect, or we basically, especially with GPX, we have a relationship where we allow people to take physical device to the GPS edge location, and GPX provides a space unpowered through which they can actually pump up the data into Oracle on a very quick turnaround time. So that's Oracle Cloud on a quick turn. So that's where between Fast Connect is not limited to just DR. There are multiple other reasons why you use Fast Connect, because your enterprise users sitting somewhere else would need Fast Connect to connect to a production environment running on Oracle Cloud. And various other reasons, right? But with respect to DR, that is one of the reasons why a lot of customers who use DR on Oracle Cloud prefer Fast Connect.
Hey, can I add, Ashwin?
Of course, Manoj, please go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, since we have been interacting with a lot of customers, both on the DR, I'll speak a little on DR and also on the Fast Connect and AWS Direct Connect. So other benefits are that first, when you use internet, it's not as reliable. The performance is not that great. And internet bandwidth is always more expensive than if you take a point-to-point lease line from your premises, from your data center to our data center, or you take an MPLS bandwidth. So one that is there, and I believe maybe Vamsi can confirm, most of the cloud service providers also charge a little lesser or substantially lesser on download charges if you come through a fast connect or a dedicated connect than if you come through an internet. So that really helps. And first you get secured because you are not coming through internet, which is best effort basis connection and all that. But at the same time, actually, it helps you to become economical. And on the DR front, I just will explain a good case study that we had with a customer where he had what Abhijit said, he had their own data center and their own DR. And what happened was once their primary storage went down, and it had some several terabytes and petabyte of data. And they had only 150 meg replication bandwidth between the DC and the DR. So then they realized that, hey, it will take them ages to replicate from the secondary to the primary. And then they went to the service provider and say, can you give me a 1 gig of bandwidth for say 1 month or 15 days? Sorry, the service provider says, sorry, I don't give you 1 gig bandwidth for at least less than 1 a year. Instead, if you are what Mr. Abhijit has done, I mean, if you do your DR on the cloud and you take a 10 gig or 100 gig connection within the same campus over a cross connect, you can just go to Oracle's site and upgrade that DC-DR link from 100 to 10 gig. It happens in a fraction of a minute. You download it over next 2-3 hours and then downgrade it down. Done. So that gives you so much of peace of mind that if something like the disaster happens, your turnaround time to go back into full production is much lesser if you are in a setup which allows you all these flexibilities. I thought I'd just like to add this.
Thanks, Manoj. In fact, you brought out a very important point which I missed. Thank you for bringing out. One of the other reasons why Fast Connect makes a huge difference, and especially compared to a regular provider and other cloud providers, is egress charges, which is basically any data which is moving from the cloud data center out to the internet or through the private net. If it is to the internet, for example, in Oracle case, the first 10 terabytes of data in a month which goes out through the internet is free of cost, right? But each provider has a different baseline, but we by far have the biggest. But the biggest difference comes in when you use a Fast Connect. There's no charge Oracle charges for egress. So how much of a data are you moving out of your data center through a Fast Connect? It's free of cost for you. That makes a huge, huge difference when you're actually having a high transaction solution like what Mr. Salian has, or even if you're doing a lot of data which is moving between production and DR or otherwise, or even regular interactions which your enterprise customers are having with the cloud.
Sure, Vamsi. So we are receiving a lot of questions from our attendees, coming in thick and fast. So before we quickly come to the last questions, I've got one question for Manoj here. Manoj, why should technology leaders align with GPX in the first place? There are lots of service providers offering the same kind of services in the market. Top 2 or 3 things that immediately come to your mind that you would like to tell to technology leaders, why they should align with GPX.
Yeah, so I mean, let me be very frank. When we came up with the Tier 4 data center, India's first Uptime Institute Tier 4 data center in 2012-13. So we were well ahead of the curve. There were other data centers and they have really progressed well, and the quality of data centers in India have really progressed and improved over the last few years. But at that point of time, 2013, 14, and even 15 also, the quality data centers that were available in India were not so great. So we came in with Tier 4 with all imported equipment and very sophisticated systems, which included things like automated fuel management system, fuel polishers. I mean, what happens is in Mumbai, power never goes. We had a power breakdown now for 6-7 hours. Now, if your fuel is lying in your tank, I'm just giving an example, in your tank for months because there is no outage and suddenly you need to use it, what happens is over the period of time, the fuel oxidizes and becomes a little lower, the quality degrades. So when you want to use that fuel for a longer period of time, your generator can start having problems, and you may find that, okay, after 8-10 hours, it's not giving that reliable power throughput, the frequency is dropping or something like that. So we have a system wherein all the fuel is taken out every week, polished the way you filter your water in your fuel filter system at your home, and puts it back into the fuel tank. That assures that whenever anything like this happens, the fuel, irrespective of whether it's 1 year old or 2 year old, is as fresh and then provides reliability. So we implemented many of these features, which gave a lot of comfort to the international service providers that, hey, you have a data center which is as good, if not better, than many of their data centers where they're located. And that encouraged many of them to put their first POP. We have many of these top 100 IT service providers, OTTs, and internet service providers whose first POP is GPX, because they got that content. They got their confidence that this is a very reliable data center and we will not be down if we host our services here. And second, I think most important thing is carrier neutral. We were carrier neutral and we were not having any restriction, because that time or even now also, most of the data centers are off carriers. So since we were carrier neutral, we had all the ecosystems coming in place, the carriers coming in with all those ISPs and internet service providers. And now we have 4 internet exchanges, the only data center to have 4 internet exchange. So all that has fallen in place over a period of time to develop GPS as the edge data center.
Great. That's some really innovative stuff there, Manoj. So I think we'll come to the final question and then open up the floor for Q&A from attendees. So I'll start with Mr. Mukherjee. Sir, what's the next 2 to 5 years roadmap for you, with respect to leveraging cloud and interconnection ecosystem offered by, data centers? Your roadmap, sir.
5 years is too long a time, so I can talk about 2 years. So basically, the thing is that we are going on a hybrid model. That is, we have decided. We have done some investment on our hardware, so that are on-prem. We will continue to use them till their life, and at the same time, whenever the new requirements are coming, we are moving to cloud. So that is the kind of a model that we are seeing. So that is number one. And number two, we definitely intend to go into high performance databases like HANA. So in that case, in that scenario, so it will be a combination of on-prem and cloud kind of a situation. So this is our plan for next 2 years.
Sure, sir.
And of course, we are also looking into another very important aspect while we are embracing cloud, we are embracing mobility. So these things also brings the question of data security and privacy. And because customers' data is important to us, so we are also looking into it in a very, very serious manner from Mahanagar Gas. That's all I can say at this moment.
Sure, sir. Great. Yogesh, your plans. Are you also going hybrid? And what are your plans with respect to security? Your thoughts?
So from our perspective, we are already hybrid, and that's a necessity for the kind of traffic that we carry. More and more, like I said, customers moving to IP, it is going to become more hybrid. So from roadmap perspective, moving to multi-cloud is definitely the first thing that would happen. Interconnection, connecting to multiple interconnection exchange across the country, that's the second roadmap that we're looking at, primarily because the content is getting generated across the country. So we need to have multiple edge data center to be connected and create a mesh out of it, so that at the source end itself, we deliver the content back into the cloud for further processing. So the building up the base infra is what we are currently focusing on. Along with moving most of the workflow back to cloud is what we are looking at. From the traditional broadcast perspective or from the content generator perspective, it has been always a centralized kind of a model where everything used to come to central place and it used to get processed. We see that changing. Every division or every content project is taking their own decision and they want the flexibility. And that's where the moving, so every content processing happening at a specific location, getting delivered to the specific edge location is what is going to happen. So that's what we are looking at.
Sure. Great, Yogesh. Vamsi, as a technology provider, what are your plans going forward? What trends do you see in the Indian market and how are you aligning with those trends?
So one of the things, I don't know if you guys noticed, 2 days ago, we announced as Oracle 26th and the 27th region across the world. So one is going to be that give the customer. Today, Indian customers are not just limited to serving the country, right? Serving just inside India. They're multinationals and global in nature. So effectively providing a path for any company in India to be able to provision infrastructure closest to their customer contingency is one, right? Second, as you spoke about, and as Mr. Mukherjee pointed out, as more and more applications come in, security and data privacy becomes very important. And Oracle has had this philosophy of ground up security. When I say ground up security, the way I don't want to go into the details, but the way we are set up, the control plane is sitting outside of the customer infrastructure. So what happens is an Oracle engineer will not have access into the customer data, and anyone who actually were to come into the customer set cannot go into another customer because the control plane is sitting outside too. So that basically provides a complete secure infrastructure for the customer, and from an Oracle perspective, protecting other customers from taking care of it, ensuring that. The third, which I'm seeing is, and the whole theme of this session and what we echo from both the speakers and Manoj is multi-cloud and hybrid, right? So some of the partnerships we're doing with, say, for example, VMware, in the enterprise segment, if you look at outside the non-born on the cloud, cloud native segment, VMware still is one of the bigger hypervisor choices. Now, we are providing a seamless ability to coexist, whether VMware is running in an edge location or in your own data center, and have VMware instances running on Oracle Cloud. That is something which is going to be big. The third, the fourth, we're seeing a huge amount of traction, starting with the likes of Zooms and some of the customers in India too, which are into anything to do with media, anything which is to do with serving a lot more customers, B2C or B2B, where amount of throughput going out is very high because of the way we are constructed and the egress charges. A lot of people, we see that sort of coming up big time, because a lot of people want to sit on Oracle and sort of dispense content from that, so that the cost of egress, which is usually a sizable part of any cloud bill, comes down drastically. Lastly, price performance, right? As more and more of these come into the cloud, it's not just about replacing like for like. Cloud gives us a huge ability to introduce new chipsets, new vendor-issued chips. For example, NVIDIA keeps coming up with a new chip for GPU every 18 months. Intel keeps coming up with a new generation. Cloud gives us that keeping ourselves abreast of any of these new chipsets, so that the customer actually gains from these new solutions, is something which we are also working on going ahead.
Sure. Great. Thanks a ton, Vamsi, for sharing your future plans. Manoj, final comments from you. What major trends are you observing in the Indian market, and how are you expanding the market for yourself?
Well, Yashwendra, worldwide and even so in India, businesses are becoming more and more digital. And what is happening is, it's not only interconnection between the content providers and the network service provider, but also interconnection between businesses also is becoming critical. So for instance, if you are watching a video on YouTube or you're surfing your Facebook, you might just click on an ad and you might go into a website of a company, and there you might do a transaction, you might do a purchase, and you have to then be shifted to a bank for completing the payment. And after the payment gets completed, an email has to go to your inbox immediately confirming the transaction, and with all the invoices and everything else. And at the same time, the message and information has to go to your vendor to supply and the courier company to pick up. So all that thing. So businesses are going to get very much interconnected with each other, and hence interconnection between businesses will become more and more critical. So as you all know that Equinix has announced to acquire GPX. Equinix is the world leader in data center services, but what is very outstanding about them is that they have their IBX platform and the Equinix Cloud Exchange Fabric, which interconnect something around 9,000 plus enterprises, OTTs, service providers, telecom service providers, maybe stock exchanges, and all that together for this sort of interconnection that might be required. And once that platform gets extended to India through this acquisition, I'm sure in India, we will be then able to offer even more value than what we have been offered till now to not only the OTTs and the cloud service providers, but also to enterprise customers. So we will continue to expand more edge data centers in Mumbai and in other parts of the country, and bring all these interconnection platforms where enterprises will now start seeing that, hey, I need to look at data centers not only whether they're reliable, whether they provide me cost efficiency, but also whether they provide me with interconnection to other businesses, not only within India, but across the world. As Vamsi said, the now Indian companies are aspiring not only to cater to the India market, but also across the world. This interconnection would become very, very important and critical. And I believe that is what is going to drive the edge data center business. And we will continue to expand on that front.
Sure. Great. Thanks a lot, Manoj, for that insightful answer. And thanks a lot for that wonderful discussion, panelists. We'll now open up the floor for Q&A from our attendees. And in fact, we've got a lot of questions already from them. The first one is, what is the panelists' view on video surveillance as a service? Anybody wants to take this up? Their view on video surveillance as a service?
So yes, it's definitely, there has been a talk about video surveillance as a service. But there is a security concern in terms of whether the enterprises or whether it's a B2C service that are ready to move the surveillance data out of their premises for someone else to monitor and run this as a service. So till there is some guideline around or agreement around the way the security would be handled for this content, right? There is definitely, it's still a bit far away, primarily from a data privacy concern, because you don't want, for example, if it's a B2C service, we don't want your home camera to be monitored by some third party and unknown person is looking into your house, right? So it's
Sure.
Still far away, but there has to be some guideline, there has to be some security measure in place. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks for the answer, Yogesh. The next question is for Manoj. Manoj, does GPX have its own fiber network in Mumbai to connect to the last mile? How last mile connectivity with multiple physical paths is ensured by GPX? Just to ensure uptime. Can you throw more light on the last mile connectivity that you offer?
Yeah, I think as Vamsi also mentioned that it's very important. Networks are very important for both cloud and data centers also. So we are a carrier neutral service provider. So we don't provide bandwidth services. But as I mentioned earlier, we have 11 telecom service providers and over 130 ISPs, and they can provide multiple fiber links and other redundancies to connect to our data center. So you can take one link from, say, one service provider, another link from other service provider, and since they come through different paths and there are multiple entry points into our data center, and then within the data center also they run through separate and diverse paths, so that reliability and diversity is ensured. If you can go with multiple service providers, more than one, that should be fine. That is why we have seen many of the cloud service providers have built their network connecting the edge data center that they have within our data center to their core centers. They have taken multiple links from multiple carriers and connected them and ensured that the services are up and running all the time, even if that is one fiber card or anything else available there.
Sure. Thanks. I hope that answers the question. The next one is, what are the key factors that an enterprise needs to consider while selecting DC at the co-location? Can we get the flexibility to select the OEM or infrastructure architecture of our choice? Anybody?
So let me take that. I think, the whole existence of, and what Manoj said, and the existence of co-location data center came up because every cloud provider has certain limitations on the chipsets or the infrastructure offerings they have. And as an enterprise, based on some of the things which you are bought into, which run on certain particular chipsets or certain particular architectures, the need comes in when you choose a co-location provider. The advantage of co-location provider has is that the co-location provider gives you the power, the space, and infrastructure, and you can bring in your own hardware, or you can work with the provider to have a different financial mechanism and use what is available from the cloud provider. So the whole coming up of this relationship and the cross-connect comes about because every cloud provider has a certain limitation in terms of the available infrastructure or offerings in their space.
Sure. So we've got time for a couple of more questions. Yeah, please go ahead, Mr. Mukherjee.
I just wanted to add one thing, since we have gone for a co-location. See, what we did is that we jotted down our requirements in a piece of paper, and the troubles that we face, what are the risks that we face. We identified our major risks, and we ensured when we came up with the requirement specification on the requirement for proposal in our tender document itself, and saw how the bidders have responded based on our risks and based on our requirements. We were able to choose the data. We were able to technically evaluate and qualify a particular data center. So one part I mentioned earlier, that in our organization, we have said that you should always try to go for a certified data center, which is at least minimum tier 3. Tier 4 is very well, is of course the best that you can have, which we have currently. So that is how we went about.
Great. Great approach there by Mr. Mukherjee. The next question is, gentleman wants to know, he says, I still find that the banking industry is shy of going 100% or near 100% to the cloud. What will be the scenario or the trend in the banking sector in the next couple of years with respect to migrating to the cloud? Anybody? Manoj, you want to take it up?
No, I will give a different, I would like Vamsi to explain that, because he's the most appropriate person. But I'll give an experience based on my time with Agile. So it was in 2003 and 2004, 2004-5, when we launched MPLS. And the bank said, MPLS for banks, no, we need dedicated lease line, only this, otherwise on MPLS, your data somebody will steal and all that. The regulator does not allow us. MPLS will never be adopted by banks. That's when ICICI came in, and ICICI said that, okay, yeah, we will adopt, they were one of the first banks to adopt MPLS, and then everything is history. So I would feel that the banks are also going through the same phase as far as cloud adoption is concerned, both on the regulatory front and their own personal confidence front. And I'm sure as things evolve, things will change. But I will leave it to Vamsi to share his experience.
Sure. So I think the question is bang on. Near 100% no, but a lot of so if I look at 3-4 years ago and today, right, a lot of customers. We have a health insurance provider in India who runs their core insurance application on Oracle Cloud, right? We're working with a bunch of banking customers who are running some of the production workloads on cloud. So which in the past 2 years back or 3 years back would have seen, are you serious? Are you really running production on cloud sort of a conversation? But, I think about a few months ago, what we did was came out with an offering which actually talks to that specific question, right? Which is, if you are a large enough bank, why do you need to go to cloud, which is a public cloud? So what we came out with is something called a dedicated cloud for the customers, which basically means in your premises or a partner's premises, we set up the entire Oracle data center infrastructure and run it for you. So you have best of the both worlds. You have the ability to have the whole scaling up, scaling down, and the speed at which you can run your IT off the cloud, but it is pretty much dedicated to you. So yes, we are seeing that happen. And the reason we came out, and we have some financial institutions outside of India who have already bought it and announced it, where they have gone ahead for this, because that's precisely why, so do I want to move 100% but into public cloud, or would I rather have a dedicated cloud for me built by an OEM, but actually have DR somewhere else? So that's what I think we will see a lot more. And obviously, I don't want to repeat at the sound of cost of being repetitive, the whole security posture and the data privacy concerns will also play a big role in how providers like us come out with clarity and tools like our CloudGuard or like our security zones to help customers use a cloud with high amount of security will also help this adoption accelerate.
Great answer there, Vamsi. So final question before we wrap up the session. This is an interesting one. Do we foresee underwater data centers in India? Is this financially viable? And what kind of benefits would it lend to service providers and end customers? I think the gentleman got a cue from Microsoft recently pulling its data center, submerged data center recently from the ocean. Anybody? Manoj, I think you should take this up.
Yeah,
underwater data centers?
yeah, it's very interesting. So those are the experiments being done by people like leaders like Google, because finally power consumption is a big aspect of data centers being considered by a lot of people, including data centers, about how they can make it more efficient. So there are multiple ways of achieving that efficiency, and Google has achieved something, and we need to see exactly how successful that is. I would believe that it would first happen with captive data centers. They will do these sort of things, and once that becomes a lot more advanced and a lot more flexible, then maybe a third-party multi-tenant data center service providers will venture into those things. But yes, what it really means is that we need to keep making efforts on conserving power, utilizing power in the most efficient manner. And that is one area where we all data center service providers are working actively, both within ourselves and also with the government, to see how we can use regenerative power, clean power more than the fossil fuel power. Yes, to that extent, it's a big initiative that is being driven within the data center industry and also by the government and other agencies. Yeah.
Great. Then, gentlemen, that's all we have time for, ladies and gentlemen. It was an amazing session today. To sum up the discussion, edge data centers are the foundation and key enablers for the acceleration of multi-cloud deployment. The enterprise edge node forms the basis of vital connectivity platform for enterprises to develop secure, reliable, and scalable private, public, and hybrid cloud architectures. Those IT leaders who intend to take their enterprises to the next level of growth, they should definitely look at aligning with the right edge data center partner. With this, we would like to bring this session to a close. I would once again thank all our panelists for their wonderful comments, wonderful insights, and our viewers for watching the proceedings. Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yashwendra.